in the fading light of a forgotten empire. Love can summon shadows that never sleep. It was a warm afternoon in 1925 when John and Eliza Hargrove first set eyes on Willow Manor. The house stood at the edge of a quiet hill in the hills near Shimla, India, where the British had built their summer homes to escape the heat of the plains. John was a tall man with a neat mustache and a job in the civil service, counting tea leaves and taxes for the crown. Eliza was his new wife, just 22, with soft brown hair pinned up under a wide hat, and eyes that still sparkled from their wedding in Calcutta 3 months before. The train ride up from the city had been long and bumpy. John had read his newspaper, full of news about Gandhi and strikes back home in England. Eliza had watched the green hills roll by, dreaming of the life they would build. "It will be perfect," she had said, squeezing his hand. "Just us and this big old house." John smiled and nodded. He had bought Willow Manor cheap from an old widow who left for England without a word. The agent said it was a bargain, built in the 1880s by some colonel who loved his roses. The horse cart clattered up the dirt road as the sun dipped low. Willow Manor came into view, its white walls cracked like old skin, the roof sagging under tiles that had slipped in monsoons past. Tall pine trees lined the drive, their needles whispering in the wind. A walled garden out back hid behind iron gates rusted at the hinges. The front door was heavy oak with a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. John lifted it and let it fall. The sound echoed inside, but no one came. "Perhaps the servants are late," John said, fishing out a key from his pocket. He turned it in the lock, and the door creaked open. Dust motes danced in the sliver of light. Eliza stepped in first, her shoes clicking on the marble floor of the hall. It smelled of damp earth and something sweeter, like wilted flowers left too long in a vase. The hall was wide, with a staircase curving up to the second floor. Portraits hung on the walls, men in stiff collars staring down with painted eyes. One showed a woman in a long dress, her face pale and turned away, as if she didn't want to be seen. John set down their bags and called out, "Hello, anyone here?" His voice bounced off the high ceiling. Silence came back. Eliza shivered, though the air was warm. "It's a bit cold in here, isn't it?" "Like the house is holding its breath." John laughed it off. "Old places like this always feel that way at first. We'll air it out." He went to open the windows, but the latches were stuck, painted over with years of neglect. He tugged harder, and one gave way with a snap. Cool air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine from outside. They explored the ground floor together. The drawing room had a fireplace with a mantel carved like twisting vines. Chairs covered in faded green velvet sat around a low table as if waiting for tea that never came. The dining room held a long table of dark wood, enough seats for 12, but only cobwebs for company. In the kitchen, pots hung on hooks, black with soot from fires long cold. Upstairs, their bedroom was at the end of the hall. The bed was huge, with posts like tree trunks and curtains of yellowed lace. Eliza ran her hand over the quilt. "It's like something from a storybook," she said. John pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "Our storybook now." That night they ate cold sandwiches from the train, sitting on the floor in the drawing room because the table felt too big. A lantern flickered on the mantel, throwing shadows that danced like fingers on the walls. Eliza told John about her girlhood in Dorset, riding ponies through misty fields. John spoke of his postings in Bombay, the heat that made shirts stick to skin, the parties with officers' wives who laughed too loud. As the clock on the mantel struck 10, its chime slow and deep. Like a heartbeat, Eliza felt a tiredness settle in her bones. "Let's sleep," she said. John carried the lantern up the stairs. The steps groaned under their feet. In the bedroom, he lit candles on the nightstands. Eliza changed into her nightgown behind a screen, her shadow long and thin on the wall. They lay side by side, the mattress sagging in the middle. John held her hand under the covers. "Good night, my love," he whispered. Eliza closed her eyes, listening to the house settle. The wind outside rustled the pines, a soft hush-hush like someone breathing through a keyhole. She thought she heard it then, faint as a sigh, a whisper from the walled garden calling her name. But when she sat up, the room was still, and John snored gently beside her. The next morning, John woke early to meet the servants. 2 had come, a cook named Ravi, thin and quiet with a mustache like John's, and a maid Lakshmi, who carried a bundle of linens and smiled shyly. "The Sahib bought the house quick," Ravi said in broken English. Old Mem Sahib left in a hurry. Said the walls talk, John chuckled. Superstitions. Just get the place clean. Eliza spent the day unpacking. She hung her dresses in the wardrobe, a tall thing of cedar that smelled sharp. In the drawer, she found a lace handkerchief, yellowed and folded neat. It had initials embroidered, A.B. Who was she? Eliza wondered aloud. She put it back, but later, when she reached for a scarf, the handkerchief was on top again, as if it wanted to be found. By afternoon, the house felt less empty. Ravi brought tea and biscuits to the garden. The walled space was overgrown, roses tangled with weeds, their blooms red as blood and drooping. A stone bench sat under a pergola, vines twisting over it like ropes. Eliza sat there, sipping her tea, while John wrote letters at a desk inside. The sun warmed her face, but the air in the garden was thick, heavy with the smell of earth turned over. That evening, as they dressed for dinner, candlelight and a simple curry Ravi had made, Eliza felt a pull. "Let's walk in the garden after," she said. John agreed. They stepped out as dusk fell, the sky turning purple over the hills. The gate creaked as they entered. Eliza's hand tightened on John's arm. "Do you hear that?" she asked. He tilted his head. "The wind, I suppose." But it wasn't wind. It was a low hum, like voices murmuring behind the roses. They walked the gravel path, crunching underfoot. At the far end, near a sundial cracked in half, Eliza stopped. The ground there was bare, just dirt packed hard, as if something had been buried deep. She knelt and touched it. The soil was cold, even in the warm evening. "What do you think is under here?" she said. John pulled her up. "Nothing good for digging, my dear." "Let's go in." They turned back, but Eliza glanced over her shoulder. In the shadows of the wall, she thought she saw a shape, a woman in white, standing still as stone. When she blinked, it was gone. Sleep came slow that night. John tossed, dreaming of ledgers that wouldn't balance. Eliza lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The plaster had cracks like veins spreading from the chandelier. She counted them, 1, 2, 3, up to 20 before her eyes grew heavy. In her dream, she was back in the garden, but alone. The roses bloomed black, petals falling like ash. The woman in white stood by the sundial, her face hidden, arms outstretched. "Come," she whispered. Eliza reached out, and the ground opened, swallowing her whole. She woke with a start, heart pounding. The room was dark, the candles burned low. John slept on. Eliza slipped from bed and went to the window. Moonlight silvered the garden below. Nothing moved. But as she watched, a petal drifted past the glass, red and fresh, though no rose grew that high. Days passed in a quiet rhythm. John went to his office in Shimla town, riding the cart down twisting roads. Eliza stayed home, reading novels by the fire Ravi lit each morning. She liked the house now, its creaks like old friends talking. Lakshmi dusted the portraits, telling stories in her soft voice about hill spirits that tricked the English. "They live in walls," she said one day, wiping the frame of the pale woman. "Whisper secrets to make you mad." Eliza laughed. "Silly, it's just wood and paint." But that night, as she brushed her hair before the mirror, she heard it again, the whisper, faint, from the wardrobe. She opened the door. The handkerchief lay on the floor, unfolded, the initials A.B. stained with a spot of red, like ink or blood. John came home late, tired from meetings about tariffs. They ate in the dining room, the table set proper with silver. "The house suits us," he said, raising his glass. Eliza nodded, but her eyes drifted to the window where the garden waited in the dark. After dinner, they played cards by lantern light. John's luck was good. He won every hand. Eliza smiled, but her mind wandered to the sundial, the bare earth. In bed, she turned to him. "John, who lived here before?" He yawned. "Some colonel and his wife. She died young, I think. Fever or something," Eliza pressed. "What was her name?" John shrugged. "Anna something. Barrow, maybe. A.B. The room spun a little. Eliza closed her eyes, willing sleep. But sleep brought dreams again. This time the woman in white was closer, her dress trailing like smoke. "He took me," she said, voice like dry leaves. "Buried me where the sun forgets." Eliza woke, sweating, the sheets twisted. She lit a candle and wrote in her journal, "The house remembers. I feel it watching." The next week brought rain, soft at first, then hard, drumming the roof like fingers. John stayed home, working in the study. Eliza explored the attic, a dusty space under the eaves. boxes of old clothes, ledgers yellowed with age. She found a photograph album, ties of leather. Inside, pictures of the colonel, stiff in uniform, and Anna, smiling in her wedding veil. They looked happy, arm in arm by the garden gate. Deeper in the album, the smiles faded. Anna alone, her eyes hollow, hand on her belly. Then nothing. Eliza closed it quick, heart fast. Downstairs, she asked Lakshmi, "Did the Mem Sahib die in childbed?" The maid nodded, eyes down. "Yes, Mem Sahib." "And the child with her?" "Sahib buried them himself in the garden. Said no church for sinners." John called from the study. "Eliza, tea?" She went to him, the album under her arm. He flipped through it, nodding. "Poor souls. That's why it's cheap. No one wants ghosts." He said it light, but his hand shook pouring the cup. That night, the rain stopped. Eliza dreamed of digging. Her hands in the dirt by the sundial, nails breaking on stone. She pulled up a box, small and white, with something kicking inside. The woman watched, laughing soft. Eliza woke screaming. John held her. "Just a dream, love. Houses don't eat people." But in the morning, she went to the garden. The earth by the sundial was turned, fresh mud like a wound reopened. No rain had fallen there. Eliza knelt, touched it. Cold again. And in the soil, her fingers found a thread of lace, white and torn. The days grew shorter, the hills around Willow Manor sinking into mist each morning. Eliza woke early, her dreams clinging like damp cloth. She didn't tell John about the lace she'd found by the sundial, now hidden in her jewelry box under a string of pearls. It felt like a secret she wasn't meant to share, like a letter left unopened. Instead, she went through the motions. Breakfast with John, toast and marmalade. His newspaper rustling as he read about railway strikes and the price of indigo. John left for Shimla most days, his cart rattling down the road. Eliza stayed behind with Ravi and Lakshmi, who moved through the house like ghosts themselves, silent except for the clink of dishes or the swish of a broom. She tried to keep busy, arranging books in the study, polishing the silver, but her eyes kept drifting to the garden. The roses looked redder now, their petals too bright against the gray sky. One morning, while John was gone, Eliza sat in the drawing room with a novel. The words blurred on the page. She heard it again, a whisper, soft as a breath from the walls. "Eliza." She froze, the book slipping to her lap. It wasn't her imagination. The sound came from the fireplace, where the vines carved on the mantel seemed to twist in the light. She stood, heart quick, and called for Lakshmi. The maid appeared, wiping her hands on her apron. "Did you hear that?" Eliza asked. Lakshmi tilted her head, listening. "Only the wind, Mem Sahib. Old houses creak." But her eyes darted to the fireplace, and she left quickly, muttering about laundry. Eliza knelt by the hearth. The ashes were cold, but something glinted inside, a hairpin, bent and blackened, as if it had been burned. She picked it up, her fingers smudging with soot. It was old, the kind Anna might have worn in her wedding photos. That afternoon, Eliza went to the attic again. The album was still there, its leather cover dusty. She sat on the floor, flipping through it. Anna's face stared back, her smile fading page by page. In one photo, she stood by the garden gate, her hand on the iron bars, her eyes wide as if she saw something beyond the camera. Eliza touched the picture, her finger tracing Anna's outline. The air grew heavy, like a storm was coming, though the sky outside was clear. She found a letter tucked in the back of the album, folded small. The paper was brittle, the ink faded but readable. It was dated 1889, signed A.B. Anna Barrow. "My love," it began. "The house knows. I hear it at night, in the walls, under the earth. It wants what we took. I cannot stay." The rest was smudged as if water or tears had fallen on it. Eliza's hands shook as she folded it back. She wanted to show John, but something stopped her, a feeling like fingers on her spine. When John came home, he found her in the dining room, staring at the chandelier. "You're pale, love," he said, kissing her cheek. "Too much time indoors." Eliza forced a smile. "Just tired. The house is so quiet without you." They ate dinner. Lamb curry, the spices sharp, and John talked about a new clerk at the office who spilled ink on his ledgers. Eliza nodded, but her thoughts were on the letter, the hairpin, the lace. That night she couldn't sleep. The bed felt too big, the curtains too heavy. John snored, his arm flung over her waist. She slipped out, lighting a candle, and went downstairs. The house was dark, the portraits watching as she passed. In the drawing room, she stood by the fireplace. The hairpin was gone, though she'd left it on the mantel. Instead, a single rose petal lay there, red and fresh, its edges curling like a burned page. Eliza's breath caught. She turned to the window, where the garden glowed under moonlight. The gate was open, though she was sure John had locked it. She stepped outside, the grass wet under her slippers. The air was thick, the hum from before louder now, like a chant from the earth. She walked to the sundial, her candle flickering. The bare patch of dirt was disturbed again, turned over as if someone had clawed at it. She knelt, her fingers brushing the soil. "It was cold, always cold, Anna," she whispered, half expecting an answer. The wind answered instead, carrying a sigh through the roses. Eliza stood, her nightgown catching on thorns as she backed away. Inside, she locked the garden door, her hands trembling. She didn't sleep that night, sitting by the bedroom window, watching the garden until dawn. The next day, John noticed her quietness. "You're not yourself," he said over breakfast. "Is it the house? Too big for you?" Eliza shook her head. "It's nothing. Just dreams." But she couldn't meet his eyes. After he left, she went to the study and found an old map of the estate tucked in a drawer. It showed the garden, the sundial marked with a small cross. Below it, in faint pencil, someone had written, "Here lies rest." Lakshmi caught her looking. "Mem Sahib, don't go there," she said, her voice low. "Bad place. The old Sahib buried things better left alone." Eliza frowned. "What things?" Lakshmi hesitated, then whispered, "Her and the child." He said they shamed him. She left before Eliza could ask more. That evening, John brought home a bottle of wine from Shimla, a gift from his boss. They drank in the drawing room, the fire crackling. Eliza felt the warmth loosen her tongue. "John, what if this house isn't right? What if something happened here?" He laughed, swirling his glass. "Every old house has stories. Don't let the servants' tales spook you." But his eyes lingered on her, worried. Later in bed, Eliza dreamed again. Anna stood in the garden, her dress stained red at the hem. She pointed to the sundial, her mouth moving without sound. Eliza felt herself walk forward, her feet bare on the cold earth. The ground split open, revealing a box, small, white, like a child's coffin. Something inside scratched, slow and deliberate. Eliza woke, gasping, her hands muddy though she hadn't left the bed. She lit a candle and checked the mirror. Her face was pale, her eyes too big, like Anna's in the photos. She touched her cheek and her fingers came away smudged with dirt. John stirred but didn't wake. Eliza went to the jewelry box and took out the lace. It was heavier now, damp, as if it had been pulled from the earth. She dropped it, her pulse loud in her ears. The next morning, she told Ravi to clean the garden. "Weeds are choking it," she said. He nodded but stayed away from the sundial, his rake avoiding that bare patch. Eliza watched from the window, her hands twisting a handkerchief, not Anna's but her own. The whispers were louder now, not just at night. They came in the day, from the walls, the floor, the air itself. "Eliza, come." She didn't tell John, he wouldn't believe her. But as she sat in the drawing room, the novel forgotten, she felt the house shift, like it was breathing with her. The portraits seemed to lean closer, their eyes following her. The woman in white, Anna, looked straight ahead now, her painted lips curved in a small, knowing smile. The mornings at Willow Manor grew heavier, the mist clinging to the hills like a shroud. Eliza woke with shadows under her eyes, her dreams a tangle of roses and dirt. She stopped mentioning them to John, who left for Shimla each day with a quick kiss and a promise to be back by dusk. The house felt bigger without him, its silence a weight that pressed on her chest. Ravi and Lakshmi worked quietly, their eyes avoiding hers when she asked about the garden or the old Mem Sahib. Eliza spent her days wandering the manor, her fingers trailing along walls that felt too cold for the season. She avoided the garden now, though its gate creaked open every night, no matter how tightly she locked it. The lace from her jewelry box was gone one morning, replaced by a single rose petal, curled and dry, tucked under her necklace. She didn't tell John about that either. He'd laugh, call it her imagination, but the petal was real, its edges sharp enough to prick her thumb. One afternoon, while John was at the office, Eliza found herself in the study. The map she'd seen before lay on the desk, its edges curling. The cross by the sundial seemed darker now, as if someone had traced it again in ink. She pushed it aside and opened a drawer, looking for something to distract her. Pens, paper, anything. Instead, her fingers brushed a key, small and brass, hidden under a ledger. It was cold, heavier than it looked, with a tiny rose etched on its head. Eliza turned it over in her hand. The house had too many locked doors, cupboards, closets, a cellar she hadn't explored. She went upstairs, trying the key in every lock she could find. Wardrobes, trunks, even the attic door, all wrong. By late afternoon, her hair loose and her dress smudged with dust, she stood in the hallway, staring at the portrait of Anna Barrow. The woman's eyes seemed to follow her, her pale hand pointing toward the staircase. Eliza noticed it then, a panel in the wall, near the base of the stairs, flush with the wood but slightly uneven. She pressed it and it clicked, swinging inward to reveal a narrow door. The key fit perfectly, turning with a soft scrape. The door opened to a staircase descending into darkness, the air damp and sour like earth after rain. She lit a candle from the hall table and stepped down. The stairs were stone, worn smooth, leading to a small room below the house. The walls were rough, unplastered, and the floor was packed dirt. A wooden chest sat in the corner, its lid carved with the same vines as the fireplace mantel. Shelves lined one wall, holding jars of clouded glass, their contents too dark to see. A mirror hung opposite, its surface spotted with age, reflecting her candle's flame like a tiny star. Eliza set the candle on the chest and opened it. Inside were Anna's things, letters tied with ribbon, a silver locket, a shawl folded neat. The letters were in Anna's hand, like the one in the album, but these were angrier. "He watches me," one read. "The colonel says I'm his, but the house says otherwise. It speaks in my sleep, tells me to run." Another. "The child is his sin, not mine. He'll bury us both to hide it." Her hands shook as she read. The locket held a curl of dark hair tied with thread. The shawl smelled of lavender, but under it, the same sweet rot she'd noticed in the hall on their first day. She closed the chest, her breath loud in the quiet. The mirror caught her eye and she stepped toward it. Her reflection looked wrong, her face too pale, her eyes too wide, like Anna's in the photos. For a moment she thought she saw another face behind hers, a shadow with no features, its mouth open in a silent scream. The candle flickered, though no wind touched it. Eliza backed away, her foot catching on something in the dirt. She knelt and brushed the floor, revealing a small iron ring set into a trapdoor. She pulled, but it didn't budge. The air grew colder, the whispers louder now, not just her name, but words. "Find me." Buried. She stumbled up the stairs, slamming the panel shut, and leaned against the wall, her heart pounding. When John came home, he found her in the drawing room, staring at the fire. "You're shaking," he said, kneeling beside her. "What's wrong?" Eliza wanted to tell him about the room, the letters, the whispers, but the words stuck. Instead, she said, "I found a key. It opened a door under the stairs." John frowned. "A cellar? Probably for wine or storage. I'll look tomorrow." But he didn't. The next morning, he left early, promising to check it later. Eliza stayed away from the panel, busying herself with dusting the portraits. Anna's face seemed clearer now, her eyes sharper, as if the paint was fresh. Lakshmi saw her staring and crossed herself, an odd gesture for a Hindu girl. "Don't look too long, Mem Sahib," she whispered. "She sees you back." That night, Eliza dreamed of the hidden room. She was there, but not alone. Anna stood by the chest, her dress dripping wet, her hands covered in dirt. "He put me here," she said, pointing to the trapdoor. "Open it," Eliza tried, but her hands sank into the dirt, pulling her down. She woke gasping, her fingers clenched around the bed sheets, gritty with soil she couldn't explain. The next day, she went back to the room. The candle was still there, burned to a stub. The trapdoor's ring was cold, unyielding. She tugged until her palms hurt, but it stayed shut. The whispers were constant now, a hum that followed her upstairs, through the halls, into the garden. She avoided the sundial, but the roses seemed to lean toward her, their thorns catching her skirt. John noticed her silence at dinner. "You're not eating," he said, pushing a plate of rice closer. "Is it the house again?" Eliza nodded, her voice small. "I found letters. Anna's. She was afraid of the colonel." John sighed. "Old tragedies, Eliza. Don't let them haunt you." But his hand lingered on hers, his knuckles white. That night, the house felt alive. The floorboards creaked without footsteps. A glass in the kitchen fell, shattering in the dark. Eliza lay awake, listening. The whispers were clearer. "Open it." Find me. She slipped from bed, leaving John asleep, and went to the panel. The door was ajar, though she'd locked it. Downstairs, the chest was open, the locket on the floor, its clasp broken. The trapdoor's ring was warm now, as if someone had held it. Eliza pulled, and the trapdoor lifted with a groan. Below was darkness deeper than the candle could reach. The air smelled of decay, sharp and sweet. She stepped back, her candle falling, snuffing out. The whispers stopped, replaced by a low laugh, soft and cold, from the hole in the ground. The air in Willow Manor grew thick, like it was holding its breath. Eliza stood by the open trapdoor in the hidden room, the darkness below swallowing her candle's light. Her hands trembled, but she couldn't turn away. The laugh she'd heard last night, soft, cold, like a child playing in the dark, still echoed in her ears. John was at work, the house empty except for Ravi and Lakshmi, who stayed in the kitchen, their voices hushed. Eliza hadn't told them about the trapdoor. She hadn't told John either. He'd call it madness, and she wasn't sure he'd be wrong. She lit a new candle, its flame small but steady, and tied a scarf around her face to dull the smell of decay. The trapdoor's edges were rough, the wood splintered as if clawed. A rope ladder hung inside, its fibers frayed. Eliza tested it, her foot pressing against the first rung. It held. She climbed down, the candle in one hand, her skirt bunched in the other. The air grew colder with each step, the walls narrowing into a tunnel of damp stone. At the bottom, her feet touched dirt. The space was small, barely wider than her shoulders, with roots twisting through the walls like veins. The candlelight showed a pile in the corner, cloth, brittle and stained, wrapped around something hard. Eliza knelt, her heart loud in the quiet. She peeled back the fabric, revealing a wooden box, no bigger than a bread loaf. Its lid was carved with a rose like the key she'd found. Her fingers fumbled with the latch, stiff with rust. Inside was a child's shoe, tiny, leather cracked, and a lock of hair tied with red thread. Underneath, a scrap of paper, Anna's writing again. He took her from me. Buried us to keep his name clean, Eliza's breath caught. The child, Anna's child. The whispers came again, louder from the walls. Mine. Mine. She dropped the box, the shoe rolling into the dirt. Something moved in the dark. A shadow too small to be human, darting past the candle's glow. Eliza scrambled back, her scarf slipping. The smell was stronger now, rotting flowers, blood, earth. She climbed the ladder, her hand slipping, and pulled the trapdoor shut. It slammed, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Upstairs, she locked the panel and sank to the floor, the candle burned to a stub. Her hands were smeared with dirt, though she didn't remember touching the soil. She washed them in the kitchen, scrubbing until her skin was red. Ravi glanced at her but said nothing. His eyes on the curry, he stirred. Lakshmi was outside, hanging sheets, her humming faint through the window. John came home late, his tie loose, his face tired. Long day, he said, dropping into a chair in the dining room. Eliza set a plate of rice and chicken before him, her hands still shaking. She wanted to tell him about the box, the shoe, the shadow, but his eyes were on his food, his mind on Shimla's ledgers. You're quiet again, he said, chewing. Still dreaming of ghosts? She forced a smile. Just the house. It's so big. But after dinner, as they played cards by the fire, John noticed something. The deck was short a card, the ace of spades gone. He searched the floor, the table, even his pockets. Odd, he muttered. It was here yesterday. Eliza's stomach turned. She'd seen the ace last night on the mantel when the rose petal appeared. That night, John slept soundly, but Eliza lay awake. The house creaked, louder than before, like footsteps pacing the attic. She lit a candle and checked the panel under the stairs. It was locked, the key still in her pocket. But when she touched the wood, it was warm, as if someone had leaned against it. She backed away, her candle flickering. In the hall, Anna's portrait seemed to tilt, her eyes glinting in the dark. The next morning, John stayed home, a rare day off. He noticed Eliza's hands raw from washing. What's got you so jumpy? He asked, pouring tea. She hesitated, then said, I found something. Under the house. A box with a child's shoe. John's cup paused halfway to his mouth. A shoe? Probably left by some servant's kid. But his voice was tight, his eyes searching hers. She showed him the panel. He frowned, running his hand over it. Never saw this before. He took the key from her and opened the door, peering down the stairs. "Smells like a grave," he said, half joking, but he didn't go down. Instead, he locked it again. "Let's leave it be, Eliza. Old houses have old junk. No need to dig up trouble," but trouble found them. That afternoon, while John read in the study, Eliza heard a thud from upstairs. She climbed the steps, her heart fast. In their bedroom, the wardrobe was open, her dresses pushed aside. On the floor lay the child's shoe, its leather gleaming as if polished. She hadn't brought it up. She stumbled back, calling for John. He came running, his face pale when he saw it. "How did that get here?" he asked, his voice low. "I don't know," Eliza whispered. "It was in the box." John picked it up, turning it over. "It's just a shoe," he said, but his hand shook. He set it on the nightstand, and they went downstairs, silent. That evening, over dinner, the air felt wrong. The chandelier swayed, though no breeze stirred. A glass tipped over, spilling water across the table. John mopped it up, muttering about clumsy servants, but Ravi and Lakshmi were already gone for the night. In bed, Eliza clung to John, her nails digging into his arm. He didn't pull away. "Maybe we should have someone look at the house," he said, his voice soft. "A priest or someone who knows old places." Eliza nodded, but she knew no priest could quiet the whispers. They were louder now, a chorus in her head. "Open it, take it, mine." Her dream that night was vivid. She was in the tunnel, the box open, the shoe in her hand. Anna stood above, her face clear now, pale, with black eyes that bled tears. "He buried her alive," Anna said, pointing to the dirt. "Find her!" The shadow moved again, small and quick, its laugh sharp as glass. Eliza woke, her throat raw, her pillow damp with sweat, or tears. In the morning, she found John in the drawing room, staring at the fireplace. The ace of spades was there, burned at the edges, resting on the ashes. "This wasn't here last night," he said, his voice flat. Eliza touched his shoulder, but he flinched. For the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. The air in Willow Manor turned sharp, like the edge of a knife. Eliza's hands bore faint marks now, red scratches, thin as thread, circling her wrists. They appeared overnight, faint at first, but darker each morning. She hid them under long sleeves, not wanting John to see. He was different now, too. His easy smile gone, his eyes darting to corners of the room as if expecting something to step out. The house was no longer just a house. It watched them, waited, its walls humming with a pulse they could almost hear. Eliza avoided the hidden room and the trapdoor, but the child's shoe followed her. She'd locked it in a drawer in the study, but found it on her pillow the next day, its leather warm, as if it had been held. John saw it too, his face gray as he picked it up. "This isn't right," he said, his voice low. "Things don't move on their own." He threw the shoe into the fireplace, but the flames didn't touch it. It sat in the ashes, untouched, until Ravi swept it away, his hands trembling. The whispers were constant now, no longer confined to night. They followed Eliza through the house, weaving through her thoughts. Find her. Take her. She felt time slip sometimes, minutes lost as she stood in the hall or stared at the garden gate. Once she found herself by the sundial, her hands in the dirt, though she didn't remember leaving the house. Her nails were black with soil, her wrists stinging under the scratches. John started staying home more, his work in Shimla forgotten. He paced the drawing room, muttering about the house's strangeness. "The air's wrong," he said one morning, his coffee untouched. "It's too heavy, like we're underwater." Eliza nodded, her throat tight. She showed him the scratches, pulling up her sleeve. His eyes widened, and he grabbed her wrist, his grip too tight. "How did this happen?" he demanded. She pulled away. "I don't know, John. It's the house." That afternoon they sat together in the study, the map of the estate spread out. John traced the cross by the sundial, his finger lingering. "What's under there?" he asked, half to himself. Eliza didn't answer. She was afraid to. Instead, she showed him Anna's letters from the hidden room, the ones about the colonel and the child. John read them, his jaw tight. "He killed them," he said finally. "Buried them to hide his shame." His voice cracked, and Eliza saw his hands shake, the same way hers did. That night, they decided to face it together. They lit lanterns, their light cutting through the dark hall. The panel under the stairs was open again, though Eliza had locked it. John went first, his lantern held high, the key in his pocket. Eliza followed, her heart loud in her ears. The hidden room was colder now, the air thick with the smell of rot. The trapdoor was ajar, a sliver of black beneath. John knelt, pulling it open. The rope ladder swayed as if something had climbed it. They descended together, their lanterns casting long shadows. The tunnel was the same, narrow, damp, roots curling like fingers. The wooden box was there, open, the child's shoe gone. In its place was a small bone, white and delicate, like a bird's wing. Eliza gasped, her lantern trembling. John picked it up, his face pale. "This isn't right," he whispered. "This is human." The shadow came then, fast and small, darting between their lights. It laughed, a high, sharp sound that made Eliza's skin crawl. John swung his lantern, but it was gone, slipping into the dark. "What was that?" he shouted, his voice echoing. Eliza clutched his arm, her nails digging in. "It's her," she said. "Anna's child. She's here." The whispers surged, a chorus now, loud and clear. "Mine. Take her. Free me." Eliza felt her legs weaken, her vision blurring. She saw Anna in the dark, her face twisted, her hands reaching. Eliza's wrists burned, the scratches bleeding now, red drops falling to the dirt. John grabbed her, pulling her up the ladder. "We're leaving this place," he said, his voice shaking. "Tomorrow." But the house didn't wait. Back in their bedroom, the door slammed shut on its own, the lock clicking. The lanterns flickered, then died, leaving them in moonlight. The child's shoe was on the bed, its leather gleaming. Beside it, the bone clean and white. Eliza screamed, her voice raw. John pounded the door, but it wouldn't budge. The air grew colder, the whispers louder, forming words. "Stay. With us." Eliza's hands moved without her will, reaching for the bone. Her fingers closed around it, and she felt a jolt, like lightning under her skin. Her vision darkened, and she saw the garden, the sundial, Anna digging with bare hands, her face streaked with tears. "He took her," Anna said, her voice in Eliza's head. "Buried her alive. Find her or you'll stay too." She came back to herself, John shaking her shoulders. "Eliza, stop!" Her hands were empty, the bone gone. Her wrists were wet with blood, the scratches deeper now, forming shapes, letters maybe, though she couldn't read them. John's face was white, his eyes wide. "What's happening to you?" he whispered. They slept in the drawing room, the door barricaded with chairs. John held her, his arms tight, but Eliza felt the house watching, its walls closing in. The portrait stared, Anna's face clearest of all, her smile sharp as a blade. The whispers didn't stop even in sleep. Eliza dreamed of the tunnel, the shadow running, its laugh a knife in her chest. She saw herself digging by the sundial, her hands bleeding, pulling up a small white coffin, its lid scratched from the inside. In the morning, John was up before her, his face grim. He'd found the bone again, on the mantel, wrapped in red thread. "We're not waiting," he said. "We're going to Shimla today. We'll find someone, a priest, anyone." Eliza nodded, but her body felt heavy, like the house was pulling her back. Her wrists throbbed, the scratches now a faint word. "Mine." As they packed, a knock came at the door. It was a man, old and thin, with a face like cracked leather. He said his name was Mr. Gupta, a retired clerk from Shimla who'd known the colonel. "I heard you bought the manor," he said, his eyes on the ground. "You should know what happened here." John invited him in, but Eliza felt a chill. The house didn't want him here. Gupta sat in the drawing room, his hands folded. "The colonel was cruel," he said. "Anna was young, his second wife. She bore a child, a girl, but he called it a sin, said it wasn't his. He locked them in the garden one night during a storm. They never came out." His voice dropped. "People say the house kept them. It doesn't let go." John's face hardened. "That's nonsense. We're leaving." Gupta shook his head. "You can try, but the house chooses who stays." He left without another word, his footsteps fading down the drive. Eliza looked at John, her heart heavy. The whispers were back, soft but sure. "Stay, mine." She touched her wrists, the word clearer now, burned into her skin. The morning was gray, the hills around Willow Manor hidden in fog so thick it pressed against the windows. Eliza and John packed in silence, their bags piled by the front door. The scratches on Eliza's wrists had darkened, the word mine now clear, etched like a brand. She felt the house breathing, its walls creaking with every step, as if it knew they were leaving. John's face was hard, his hands unsteady as he tied a rope around their trunks. "We'll be in Shimla by noon," he said, his voice flat. We'll find a priest. This ends today. Eliza nodded, but her body felt heavy, like the air itself was pulling her back. The whispers were a roar now, not just in her head, but in the floors, the doors, the roses outside. Stay, mine, forever. She clutched John's arm, her nails digging in. He didn't flinch, but his eyes were wild, like a man caught in a storm. They sent Ravi and Lakshmi away, telling them not to return. Ravi hesitated, his eyes on the garden gate. Don't go there, Sahib, he said. The ground is hungry. John waved him off, but Eliza saw the fear in the cook's face as he left. Lakshmi whispered a prayer, pressing a small charm into Eliza's hand. A stone carved with a spiral. Keep it, Mem Sahib, she said. It holds the earth still. Eliza slipped it into her pocket, its weight cold against her hip. The cart was ready, the horse stamping in the drive. John loaded the bags, his breath short. Eliza stood by the door, her eyes on the garden. The gate was open again, the roses redder than ever, their petals falling like blood. She felt a tug, not in her mind but in her bones, pulling her toward the sundial. John, she said, her voice small. I need to see it. One last time. He grabbed her arm. No, Eliza, we're leaving now. But her feet moved slow and sure toward the gate. John followed, cursing under his breath. The garden was silent, the fog curling around the roses like smoke. The sundial stood at the far end, its shadow sharp despite the dim light. The bare patch of earth was turned again, fresh dirt piled high, as if something had clawed its way out, or in. Eliza knelt, her hand sinking into the soil. It was cold, always cold, but now it pulsed, like a heart under the ground. John pulled at her shoulder. Stop it, Eliza. We're done here. But her fingers kept digging, tearing at the earth. She found it, a small white coffin, its wood splintered, scratches deep on the lid. Her breath stopped. The whispers screamed, Open it! Free her, mine. John yanked her back, his face white. What is that? He shouted. Eliza's hands moved on their own, prying at the coffin's lid. It gave way with a crack, revealing a bundle of cloth, stained and damp. Inside was a tiny skeleton, its bones delicate, wrapped in a shawl. A lock of hair tied with red thread lay beside it. Eliza's vision blurred, and she saw Anna standing by the sundial, her face twisted with grief. He took her, Anna said, her voice in Eliza's head. Buried her alive. Now you're mine. Eliza's wrists burned, the scratches bleeding fresh. She felt her body shift, her thoughts slipping, as if someone else was moving her hands. She reached for the bones, but John grabbed her, pulling her to her feet. No, he yelled. You're not hers. He dragged her toward the gate, but the roses moved, their thorns catching his coat, her dress. The fog thickened, the garden shrinking around them. The shadow came then, small and quick, its laugh sharp as glass. It darted between the roses, its shape clearer now, a child, her dress torn, her eyes black pits. John swung his arm, but it vanished, reappearing by the coffin. Stay, it whispered. Its voice joined with Anna's. Eliza's legs gave out and she fell, her hands in the dirt again. Her body shook, her voice not her own. Mine, she said, the word tearing from her throat. John lifted her, carrying her through the gate. The house loomed behind them, its windows dark, like eyes watching. He set her in the cart, tying her hands with his belt to keep them still. We're leaving, he said, his voice breaking. He whipped the horse and the cart lurched forward. The road was rough, the fog swallowing the manor behind them. Eliza's head lolled, her eyes half closed. The whispers followed, fainter but still there. You can't leave, mine. In Shimla, they found a priest, an old Englishman named Father Brooks. His hands knotted with age. He listened to their story, his face grim. The house is bound, he said. Anna and her child, they're tied to it, to the sin that killed them. You must burn what holds them. He gave them a vial of holy water and a prayer scratched on paper. Go back, he said. Face it, or it will follow you. John didn't want to return, but Eliza's eyes were distant, her hands twitching, the scratches now spreading up her arms. We have to, she whispered. They won't let me go. They rode back that evening, the manor waiting in the fog. The gate was open, the roses dripping red. John carried a lantern and a can of kerosene from the cart. Eliza held the vial, her fingers numb. In the garden, the coffin was still open, the bones gleaming. The shadow stood by the sundial, Anna behind it, her face clear now, pale, her eyes black, her mouth open in a silent scream. John poured the kerosene over the coffin, his hand shaking. Eliza sprinkled the holy water, her lips moving with the prayer. "Release us," she said, her voice hers again, but weak. John struck a match, the flame bright in the dark. He dropped it and the coffin caught fire, the flames blue and sharp. The shadow screamed, a sound that tore through the air, and Anna's form flickered, her face twisting in pain or relief. The roses burned too, their thorns curling black. Eliza felt the weight lift, the whispers fading, but her wrists still burned. The word, mine, faint, but there. They stumbled back to the cart, the fire spreading to the garden's walls. The manor stood silent, its windows reflecting the flames. John drove fast, the horse panting, until the house was gone, swallowed by the fog. In Shimla they found a small inn, the priest waiting. He blessed Eliza, his hands steady, but her scratches didn't fade. "They may stay," he said. A reminder. They left for Calcutta the next day, then England, the manor a memory they didn't speak of. Eliza's wrists healed slowly, the word mine a faint scar. She dreamed of the garden sometimes, the roses red and alive, but the whispers were gone. John held her tighter at night, his eyes still searching corners, as if the shadow might follow. The manor burned that night, the fire taking the house to ash. Locals said the ground by the sundial was black, the earth refusing to grow. No one rebuilt. The hills stayed quiet, the fog hiding what was left.